Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of TFT Study Hall with myself, Frodan.
And me, Dishsoap. I'm on cam again. Hello. Hi.
And today is August 19th, 2024. And this is releasing on August 20th. And we got a lot of news and things to cover. Primarily that there is already a B patch announced for 14.16. But we also want to cover the base of what's happening in the current meta to help give you a good reference of what's happening. So before we go into it, let's first catch up. Dishsoap, how have you been for the past couple weeks? I guess ever since we got back from EWC.
Yeah, I've just been chilling. Pretty much played almost every day on stream. I know my audience has felt like I've been flaking a bit late recently. So it's good to be back without feeling stressed for tournaments. I'm just not gonna play in them because I don't have to. So yeah, it's been pretty nice.
Yeah, you already are technically qualified for the World Championship just by getting the Challenger. So congratulations on your second Worlds appearance, man.
Yeah, who could have seen that coming?
Big surprise. Wow. All right. First player to lock in the World spot of the set. And it's Dishsoap.
I just wanted to say thanks to Malala for walking so I could run.
That's right. Malala's requirements was to make it back to the regional finals, which is pretty difficult for a lot of people. And so they said, you know what? Let's just guarantee it. Just have to get the Challenger. And Dishsoap's like, okay, sounds good to me. All right, let's go ahead and dive into the current state of the meta. So that way, as we preview the B patch, you can kind of understand where things are going to start and maybe potentially fall because there's going to be a lot of nerfs. So the very big topic of conversation for every meta tier list starts off with Ahri Scholars, and specifically the variations that Ahri can be played in. People are rerolling Ahri with Zoe and Poppy and playing a 4 Bastion 4 Scholar backline and getting Ahri to have a ton of AP by giving her the Arcana Charm. But we also innovated her build by finding out that you don't necessarily want to prioritize blue buff as one for best items. It's a good item, but her best items are things like Adaptive Helm and then stacking 2 of those with Death Cap. But then there's also people talking about Ahri Vanguards and maybe pushing tempo and playing it more like Syndra, where you stabilize an Ahri 2 and then instead push levels instead of trying to prioritize rerolling. So talk to me about Ahri Dishsoap and what you think about this comp.
Her damage is a little overtuned. That's why she's getting beat patched, especially into tanks that rely on their resistances. So basically any non HP based frontline is just gonna melt really fast to her. Also melee carries are gonna struggle really hard if they get caught in her ults, which does all the true damage. So yeah, she's super strong. It's kind of weird because I think before the sets, before they did all this said they're gonna normalize the mana and have stuff overflow and not get capped, I guess. I don't know what the best way to say it, but basically you can't lose extra mana like you used to in past sets. We thought that would make the builds more intuitive, but I don't know. I feel like BIS Ahri being double adaptive kind of proves the contrary, as in I feel like the meta system is just gonna be super complicated and you're gonna have to need someone to do the math on it before you can actually get this, regardless of what the system is.
Yeah, that's right. For people who probably haven't heard it by now, if you have, a 5 mana requirement for your mana cast, but you get 10 mana from adaptive, you bank that 5 mana. And so they're trying to make those changes to make it more intuitive. But once again, we all thought, blue buff Nashers was probably going to be really good. And it turns out double adaptive, which doesn't really seem very intuitive. You probably want 1 at most and then play other items. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes in. Riot probably has a design challenge with that because I feel like we're regularly wrong. Some people like that aspect of it. It feels like they're rewarded for diving deeper into the numbers, maybe into the data and figuring it out. Because part of what helped tip that for us was we looked into the data sites to actually look at what was BIS. So I'm kind of 50-50 on it, but I agree. It does feel a little bit weird. And it's never fun to play the mana guessing game, especially when you're trying to do it intuitively on the fly.
Yeah, it's really cool for discovery, but as time goes on, stuff gets discovered and gets spread, and then it just feels like unintuitive and weird sometimes.
The novelty wears off, definitely. Sure. Okay, let's talk about the hero augments that are also part of this composition. And I want to ask you, this is not Factor Fraud, but maybe a little bit of a preview of it. So Horsepower Lilia and Witchy Wallop Poppy, are those augments for real in this composition?
Yes and no. So the thing is, I think both of them are for sure playable, and they play very similar boards to the Ahri board, but I kind of look at the opposite way. I feel like you're still trying to itemize your hero augment first, but then just Ahri fits into the backline the best just due to the trait web.
Right.
So you're going to hold your backline items. I don't really see it as an extension of playing Ahri. I still look at it as a separate comp, even though they play the same units. That might just be some mental gymnastics thing, but that's kind of the way I see it. But yeah, I don't know. I think they're both playable. Both of your augments are playable and good.
It is still very good. And yeah, ultimately, you're just basically taking an alternative route to the same condition, which some people may like because it's fun to see Lilia actually do damage. Because in the very beginning, this hero augment was averaging like straight 5.5. It was terrible. Our previous episode, we were making fun of it. Now it's literally on top of the meta. If you're able to get it, I see just Fairy Crown Lilia, like just with that item, is able to sometimes like 4 or 5 streak if you have a good supportive backline with it. Very, very ridiculous. Have you seen the 6 Bastion variations of these hero augments with Lilia and Poppy?
I played the Poppy one earlier today just because I got raid boss, and then I felt like it was more efficient to play extra Bastion than run the Force Collar. And it was strong, but I still went like 6th. I just died. I don't think it was weak. I think it was just like a just unfortunate scenario where you just like die when you don't want to.
Yeah. Maybe the meta is not favorable for it too, because with part of what makes it difficult about some of these comps that we're going to talk about is a lot of those resistances and super tank stuff. It doesn't matter if you keep stacking up those resists with combat augments when true damage just kind of bursts through it. And that's where there's a little bit of frustration. That's kind of what's giving units like Wukong a really hard time currently in the metagame, which we'll touch on in a little bit. So I've played the Bastion Lilia version. It's kind of a hybrid of the Bastion Callista from PvE, where you played like a Bastion front line, had Callista scale the back line. Lilia had Archangels, and over time she was one-shotting everything. Super funny, but it's just straight up weaker than the Ari version. So keep an eye out for that if they nerf it really hard.
What I feel like the Lilia version just one-shots everything regardless of how late the fight it is.
You would think so, but she I guess like part of it was that she like actually one-shot. Like before she would one-shot, but then like the scholars like finish it off. I'm telling you, man, she does like 4K, like it's straight up and just wipes everything. It's actually crazy.
I was more mentioning that I've seen her do like 2K off rip, like on the first ult.
She does. I mean, at that point, it's part of it is just the satisfaction of like you just watch. It's kind of like set 7 Lilia, where she was like a scale scored mage deer.
Oh, that one was kind of a beast.
Yeah, it kind of felt like that kind of variation. So good times. Let's talk about the other hero augment that's on top right now in S tier, which is Rumble Molten Caramel. No longer a joke either. And the way you want to itemize Rumble is just a bunch of rods. Death Cap, JG, and BT. What do you think about this hero augment? Is it justified with the top 2 here?
I think it's good, but I think it's like I think people haven't really investigated too much in the counterplay to this augment, because I feel like I was able to diff it in late game scenarios a lot of the times, just because like I just don't feel like he's very tanky. Like he does a lot of damage, but if you can kind of divert him into like burning some of your weaker units and then focus firing later, I feel like he's very beatable.
Interesting.
Like this is one of the ones I think is like slightly overrated right now, but like I still think it's strong. It can still like steamroll lobbies for sure.
Yeah.
I just found personal success like against it.
Definitely. I think that what I've seen from Rumble is that it just basically kind of tries to be like a fast blitzkrieg. Like it just goes through the weak side of your front line, try to get and just wipe things as soon as possible. But people clump a lot of their front line, they clump a lot of their units, and Rumble just gets a lot of max value that way. So there is possibilities for some counterplay. On the other hand as well, I also think that we may have not figured out like the optimized version of Rumble either. Maybe the Molten Caramel. Because like people are figuring out like, is it the Preserver Splash? Is it like maybe leaning more into blasters? You're just playing like Molten Caramel with the blaster Vanguard stuff that we talk about in a bit. So yeah, that's definitely food for thought. We got a couple 4 costs coming up here. So Portal, Callista, and Frost are in the S tier. Which is your favorite out of these 3?
I probably played the most Callista, but as for which one feels like the safest, like if I'm in a spot for it, I feel like if you get Frost Emblem on like good tempo, I feel like it's so hard to buff for. Like you actually just have to try.
Really?
For, yeah. That's the comp I felt like is like the easiest when it's like rolling. I don't think it necessarily caps the highest. I've had a lot of difficulty like winning games with it, but it just feels like super stable if you get to that Frost Bear setup.
What is the stable version of it? Do you have to hit Nasus 2 and Varus 2 and Olaf 2, or can you be more stable before that? Because hitting Diana is a really big part of it, so you want to not roll to 0. Because if you're just rolling to 0 for all your 3-4 costs, you can be poor really easily and never get to 9.
Yeah, I think rolling to like 10 or 20 is usually fine in the comp. The thing is, like, I mean, you do kind of need the Varus Nasus 2 to be like quote unquote stable. The only other options is like 5 costs. You can actually fit a lot of 5 costs in the comp because Zillion like pairs into a lot of stuff, aka pairs into like Camille, it pairs into like Morgana. Those are other options to get today. I mean, it was very, very high roll, but I played a Frost game where I hit like, or I hit Briar 2, and I just like duo carried her and Olaf with 7 Frost both had melee items. I think I had the Sterix augment.
Ah, okay. That's fun.
And then that was the way I could win, but was trying to go for the Varus version at the start.
Unleash the Beast, Briar, 7 Frost. That sounds really interesting. Yeah, you know what? I have had a lot of success with Frost. I think my worst placement is like 3rd with it, playing it a handful of times. I also have never really tried the non-Varus, non-Nasus version of it. So I should try out some more stuff. I think you're inspiring me to branch out a little bit.
Yeah, like the thing is, like I only think it's like Varus Nasus are 5 costs. I really don't think there's anything else.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the stats on it do seem good. Like I've seen like people say like, oh, like Frost Smolder is actually really good. I'm like, is it really? And I looked at the stats. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't look that bad. So maybe there's even more variations that we haven't really discovered yet.
I mean, like just intuitively, if you like Briar, like I feel like Briar and Smolder should be stronger than Varus Nasus, right?
Right. Yeah, because they are the carries. They are 5 cost. Their traits also exactly complement. Right, Varus is a blaster, so is Smolder. Okay, I actually don't like Portal that much personally, because I just feel like right now Rise is the hardest 4 cost to hit, and with Portal, if you're stuck on 1-star Rise, I mean every Portal player knows you're stuck on Rise 1. If you're contesting the Bastions, even like Ahri players are pulling Teryx out of the pool sometimes. It just feels like that upgrade matters for a lot of reasons, but you're just not going to be super stable, and so you're just kind of stuck and dying. But Portal is good if you can hit it. I just personally feel like I'm in Rise jail all the time, and that's what's always turning me off from the comp.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. For the comp to really succeed, it needs to be in the spot where you're like winning so hard mid game because you get like the 6 Portal early or something, and then you can push it out into like you hit like 1 Rise with like your other front lines upgraded, and then you can just go 9 and then win that way and hit like the Diana 2, hit Rise 2 later. Like that's the ideal. But a lot of times with Portal, I mean, I've done this a lot where you play it, don't necessarily win the entire game, but you'd like load up into stage 4 with like 40-50 HP, roll down to like 0 and 4-2, and then you just no Rise, and then you can maybe
no Rise.
maybe get like a 6 or something.
You're just playing 6 Portal plus garbage.
Yep, that definitely feels like terrible.
All right, Callista is a really successful comp. It just feels kind of like Disco from set 10 to me, where it's just really expensive, but if you can get online, and it's like a 4 cost comp that actually needs 5 costs to succeed. And so Callista has a lot of variations to it though that can also make it succeed, and you can also splash Callista in. So she's a very versatile carry. When I see her win a lot of lobbies, what do you think is like the one secret or one like angle that you feel like a lot of Callista players are missing?
Okay, I actually play this comp way too much, and I feel like I have a lot to say about it.
Okay, go ahead.
I think, I mean, okay, well, this might not be good advice because it's getting B-patched, but I think the Fiora Nasus version is like very clearly the best version. Like, I think Nasus is the best frontliner even without Shapeshifter. And then the second point is I often don't even play Shapeshifter on 8. I think usually Morgana's stronger. And like the actual secret tech is you just play Yuumi, or you play Nora for the Yuumi.
Ooh.
Just for the AD on Callista. Like, it is actually crazy how much AD this Nora gives to your Callista. And then you actually have like the scaling damage to win like a lot of these like really hard matchups.
Yeah, that makes sense too, because you're building like Ragebait, Last Whisper. Like, where's your actual damage?
Yeah, I think Nora, like in my opinion, is very, very core to this comp. I guess we should probably add it to the website. But this is I mean, I kind of figured this out like yesterday. Because like I hit like a Nora 2, or not really Nora 2, I hit like a Nora 1 on 8, and I was like, okay, why would I play like Nico over this Nora? Why would I just lose like 40 AD on my Callista when it matters to play Shapeshifter for my Nasus who's not dying anyways? So then I just like didn't play Shapeshifter, and it felt really good.
That's really cool. Callista is the least. I have the least amount of reps on Callista personally, and so that's really cool because Callista is really contested every lobby. There's always someone playing it, so I was like, I don't want to contest that. So that's really interesting tech. We'll keep that in mind.
Also, I don't even get it because like you would think like double Ginsu Callista and then you get like even Trout on Nasus would feel good, but it doesn't. Like the only build that feels good is when you actually have the Last Whisper on the Callista, and I cannot explain why.
I found that as well. I mean, the only time I've ever been okay without that is I play like a Rage Blade red buff Callista, which seemed to also do okay. But I do need that last whisper somehow like near her because it just feels like it doesn't work otherwise. The final comp in S tier that we'll talk about, because Build Different is here, but it's just kind of the same thing as we always talk about, which is just when the four cards are good, Build Different is good. We don't talk too much more about it. Check our previous episode if you want information about that. The last S tier comp is Warriors, and Warriors have got a huge amount of renaissance through it because people are figuring out that Katarina, when you compare her with the Warriors, is really good. And Neela, once more, is actually kind of back to PvE status where she's really dominant. You get her to 3-star. She's unkillable. If you don't have anti-heal, heaven forbid, you just never actually get her down. She full heals every single time she's casting. And the cool thing about Warriors that I really like is that Warriors, you can actually duo carry a bunch of different variations. You don't have to just play like Neela Akali. You've seen like Neela Katarina, or let's say you're just not anywhere near those rerolls because they're contested. People are taking, units out of the pool. You can just play Neela like Fiora. I've seen people do like variations where they include Gwen or a warrior emblem on somebody else like Callista. So Warriors is a really cool, dynamic reroll composition. It's getting nerfed. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but I want to hear your thoughts on it. What do you think about the hype about Warriors?
I think it's really, really good. I think the comp like starts and ends with Neela. I think she's like the backbone of the comp. I think she's like by far the best warrior, and I don't really think the line's worth investing in if you're not 3-starring her. Personally, I think like Katarina and Akali are like cool duo carries, and they can both do their own thing. But I think it's like very firmly a Neela comp, just to like So like I'm just saying like I wouldn't play the comp without Neela 3.
Yeah, I think that's wise. I mean, I used a different icon on the tier list initially just because I didn't want to have like too many of the same units on there. But you're right. And I do think that anyone who's tried to primary carry Akali or primary carry, like solo carry Katarina, know exactly that feeling where you throw your burst out, you try to get there and you don't finish the job. And even worst case scenario, Katarina gets targeted, Akali gets targeted, right? Ari locks on, kills them. Then what happens? You don't have anything else. Neela not only has a ton of damage, she stays safe, right? She dashes back, able to work front to back, and then sometimes she gets to the back line too. She's like she stays safe, and yet she somehow dashes to the back line and kills the enemy carry. So
I feel like she's like taking like the best aspects of both like ranged and melee carries and combining them to one. Like she stays safe, but like she can still like heal, do a ton of damage, like still access the back line, but then she just like can just drop aggro and heal back up.
It's so nasty. Yeah. All right, and actually this transitions us to A tier as well, which is a pyro version of Neela. 5 pyro is particularly why this is strong. In fact, there's 2 pyro comps right here, Pyro Neela and Pyro Varus. 5 pyro is just really, really powerful in general. And I think that that's partially what is gating Varus. It feels like Varus, because they know how strong 5 pyro could be, it feels like when he doesn't have an emblem, he's not actually that good. Do you agree with that? Do you feel like Varus is only playable with that +1?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree that the strength of 5 pyro just is so much stronger than like any of the other intervals to like a crazy degree. And I definitely agree that it doesn't feel that good to play without the pyro emblem, because it's like not only that you're getting like the extra execute and like the infinite extra attack speed, it's that you're getting like a damage item ideally on someone like the smolder or whatever.
Yeah, it's true.
It's just like such a massive swing that other comps don't really have to deal with, because like even portal, like you get the portal emblem, you get to fit a portal, but like it's just like extra shield. But the pyro emblem just like gives your whole team attack speed, and like you can fit a portal without the emblem, but you can't fit 5 pyro without it. It's just like I don't know. In the B patch, they also didn't really touch any of the previous breakpoints of pyro, which I kind of disagree with. Like they didn't buff like 2, 3, or 4 pyro. So that sentiment, it's not really gonna change. It's just the top end of it has gone down. But yeah, I guess we can talk about that later.
No, let's actually talk about that right now, because the part of the reason why I want to go down this far is because this is basically where the B patch is ending, at least as far as we know. They're nerfing some augments. They're nerfing Portal, Vanguard, and Pyro. They're nerfing Ari and Neela and Fiora and Nasus. So that's why I want to talk about all these comps before we actually go into the B patch. But it's a good segue. So with that being said, how do we expect this to impact? Like, we can just kind of go through all the changes individually. Portal is nerfing the 3 portal bomb base damage from 135 to 90, which is a lot, 45 flat damage, and a lot of times it AoEs the clump. So that's actually a lot of damage you can deal. So how do we feel about that?
Oh, that's a very good change. That's like one of like the smart changes that like I would never think about, like how to like nerf portal, but that actually just makes like a ton of sense thinking back on it. Just like it helps so much because three portals has been like one of the strongest openers of the whole set, and a lot of that's just like the extra damage you get. Like sometimes you just get like an AoE 135 damage proc, which is insane. So nerfing that to 90 makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and again, like I said, anytime you play let's say you have like 2-star Vanguard in the front and you have like Hogma and a Twitch in the back, the portal bombs comes out, your units are at half HP. You're like, what? What happened? You just immediately lose that fight. That's partially why 3 portals is really strong. We wrote that in our meta read. Hopefully, you guys checked out that newsletter portion. So I agree with that. What about Vanguards? 4 Vanguards specifically getting nerfed, and that's a big meta shift as well. A lot of people figured out that 4 Vanguard was really cheap. It's really effective. Even if you're contested, there's a lot of variations of 4 Vanguards, and it just gave you so much shield. It nerfed from 35% at 4 Vanguard to 30%. Some people might feel like that's not that big of a deal. Is it that big of a deal?
Oh, it's a huge change. Anyone who says it's not a big deal is like kind of clueless. I'm not trying to flame, but like it's huge because the thing is the Vanguard shield procs twice. It procs like at the start of health or at the start of the round, and when they get to 50% health. That's on like in theory 4 units. So if you think about it, that's like you're cutting away like 40% team HP, kinda. You're cutting away like 40% of the total shields.
So it's not. I know what you're saying though. When you start stacking the effects, it actually looks like it's a lot. That's interesting.
You're losing 40% of your team's effective health, I guess, or no? Okay, I don't even know. Like this analogy doesn't even work. But you're just losing a lot of shields. Like you're just losing a lot. Trust.
I feel really good listening to you explain this now because I was trying to justify to my chat why I would build Spark when I was playing Syndra, or because they were like, "Why do Syndra shreds? Why would you need to build it?" And I was like, "Well, the 10% extra shred is like really good. It's like dealing 10% more damage." And they're like, "No, it's not." And I'm like, "You're right, it's not, but like just like work with me here. You understand that I'm trying to deal more damage because it's burst. Like late game damage burst is what matters. I need more damage." And then they just kept memeing me the whole time. They're like, "Oh, it's just 10% more." So I know exactly what you're talking about.
I mean, those guys never played through the 2-cost kill, but that was like Spark was missing that comp.
yeah, 100%. Oh man, you're talking about set 10k, right?
Yeah. That one also 20% shredded.
Yeah. Okay, so Pyro, you said they didn't touch 2, 3, 4 Pyro, but they did nerf 5 Pyro from 18 to 15% threshold, which is a lot, and then 70 to 60% attack speed, which is justified. Does this make 5 Pyro still really strong in your book, even though they nerfed it a lot?
I feel like if you have a Pyro emblem, like you're still gonna play 5 Pyro. I don't think this makes you want to play like 4 Pyro. Maybe they can touch like the individual units because like with the Nasus nerf, maybe there's like room to justify like another Varus buff to make him feel better. Maybe that's the way you make the whole trait work because like maybe these numbers aren't correct. Like because like I'm just thinking about it. Like if you have 5 Pyro with these numbers, can you really give that much more to 4 Pyro? Probably not. Maybe just the way to balance is through the units now.
All right, we will see. And I think Pyro's also really flexible and easy to hit. So maybe, yeah, you're right. We just play 5 Pyro. It's just not as like auto win once you get Pyro on Smolder 2, because I've seen that just like crush so many strong boards that it looks like it's not going to stand a chance against. So definitely know what you're talking about. Ari got nerfed. Her 1, 2, and 3-star version. Oh, wow. She got nerfed on 2 different fronts. So her 1, 2, 3-star got nerfed on her true damage and her passive bonus AP. Does Ari go back to being a meme like at the beginning of the set, you think?
I'm trying to like visualize how much like damage it actually is.
It's like 50% less AP, and then they're nerfing that scaling already. So lot.
I mean, I don't know. I'm like actually pretty bad at like visualizing damage nerfs. I feel like people will just claim they know what this means, but like I don't know. I'll say it right now. Like I don't know if Ari's dead or not.
Okay. I'll just say that I don't think she's top of the meta anymore.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's fair to say.
It might be one of those things where maybe she has a build that's still really good. Maybe if you're solo Ari, you can make it work and it's like a good top 4. I don't know if it's going to be as dominant as a victory. And more importantly, if she's doing less damage, maybe some tanks can come back like we talked about with Wukong.
Yeah, I like speaking on like the frontline aspect. I think like you're probably only gonna see the like Bastion build now, just to the Vanguard nerf. I think that like the 4 Vanguard nerf is actually just massive. Probably only worth justifying it is if you like hit like all the Vanguard 3 stars and if you're uncontested. But I would expect the Bastion version to be the sole version now.
If it felt silly to watch this, 4 Vanguard RE2, like everything's just 2-star with more 2 RE2, just beat like this 4-2 roll down where you hit a couple of 2 stars. On your 4 cost, you're like, yes, I feel stable. And you queue him at the RH, just kills everything. You're like, never mind. Neela lost 5 AD, and Fiora lost some damage on her ability and her it's like her AoE, but not really. It's like her ability split damage. It's a lot of numbers. It's kind of hard to kind of parse, but it looks like just a 10% hit across the board. Fiora's a unit that I don't think people really complained about really often. So I think that surprises people.
Yeah, like I read some of the feedback about like all these changes, and the Nyla and Fiora one, or Neela, sorry, I keep on mispronouncing it. The Neela
You
and
can say
Fiora
whatever
ones.
you want. It's our podcast. Who cares?
Oh, okay, yeah, I'm Nyla. Never mind. The Nyla and Fiora nerfs were the ones that like got the most criticism. And I can kind of see it. So, like, I don't think Nyla has truly taken over like the low elo meta. I think it's like still kind of a high elo thing and like a tournament thing. If you didn't know it, like crazy in the last tournament, I think. So like I don't really think it's like spread to ladder. So like people might not know that this unit's like kind of broken. I think this AD nerf is like completely justified, especially considering you're nerfing like the Ari and Vanguard stuff. The Fiora nerf, I also kind of think it's justified because like I don't know, you're nerfing all these like you're nerfing Ari, you're nerfing like this warrior comp. You probably don't want this like you probably don't want the Kalista line being like super powerful. And when I say the Kalista line, I mean the Kalista Fiora line. She is your main duo carry in this comp. I don't really know how to like parse this nerf. It might be enough, it might be over, but I can definitely see Fiora taking a hit. I think she was very strong.
It does incidentally continue to nerf this witchcraft karma line, which is a little bit sad. Yeah. And also, I heard from Mort's stream comments that he doesn't like specifically that Fiora is very flexible without her traits, as in like you can kind of play her as if she's a threat. And I said, Mort, that's like my favorite thing about her. Like, like I like that you can kind of splash her as a duo carry in a lot of different variations.
I like the thing is like I don't know. I feel like those like specifically like those traits. Sorry, I'm trying to like press like put my thoughts into place. Like because like 2 warrior, 2 witchcraft is not gonna like even if you have those traits active, it's not gonna be that much of a buff over like 0 witchcraft, 0 Fiora or 0 warrior, just due to like the power structure of the trait. So I don't really agree with that comment because like does he really only want it to be viable in like 4 warrior, 4 witchcraft or something? That it requires a lot of investment of units.
Yeah. It brings us back to the Ashe debate from last set, where it felt like if you played 2 sniper Ashe, it's like, why are you even playing Ashe? Or if you play trick shots, you felt like you need to play 4 trick shot on Kai'Sa. While, you know, I guess like they want the payoff for investment, because then the alternative is why ever play warrior? Why like do traits even matter in this game? Like if we kind of make it that they're agnostic to it. But I do think that there's also an other side of it, which is like if it's so tied into these units, it just feels like you're very linear and you're kind of within this guardrail of you have to play 4 warrior to unlock Fiora. Otherwise, it's never worth playing her. And that just feels bad for a 4 cost.
I prefer like the system where it feels powerful to play like just with their base traits activated. I think it's like fair to say that like you might need like the 2 traits activated for the units to feel good.
Yeah, I mean, he did say that he doesn't like it, that you don't have to play any traits.
Yeah, but I don't know. I that was one of my biggest complaints of last set as well. Like having to play like 4 sniper, 4 trick shots, 6 duelists to unlock these carries at all, 6 umbral. I don't know. Some people enjoy it. I think a lot of like cool board building is lost trying to do that.
The final change is that Nasus' ability damage goes down. That honestly, I wasn't thinking they're going to nerf that. Is that actually a big nerf to Nasus?
This just affects his damage. It doesn't affect like how much like HP he steals, right?
Yeah, because so basically Nasus casts, he steals the HP, and then he like throws down his staff and hits. And we've seen him like sometimes like end fights by himself because he just kills the carry. So maybe that aspect of it is less damaging. But yeah. This is not the nerf that I was expecting.
I mean, I think it's perfectly fair because it's like I don't think it's controversial to say he's the best tank, the 4-cost tank. He's way better than Rakan. I think he's better than Taric. And he also does way more damage than them as well. So I think this is like a completely fair nerf.
All right, so we spent a lot of time on this meta section, so let's not go too much more beyond this. And if you guys want to catch up on the tier list, check out TFTAcademy's tier list anyways. Plus, you never know, like the B patch might shake everything up. I do want to bring up a couple of other things before we move past the section, though. The first is, what's the state of Karma? She was doing so well. She was a 4-cost that was so flexible. Now it's like you don't really see her at all. If you do, it's probably like barely 4th. Have you been able to find success with Karma? And if so, what are you playing around her?
I don't think she's like amazing, but this is kind of weird to put it, but like I don't like go into a game trying to play Karma, but like Loki, she fits on a lot of boards. As in like if you just load up with like a blue buff plus anti-heal, like she can fit into a lot of setups, especially like legendary setups that can definitely win the game. But I for sure think if you're like trying to do like a 4-2 Rodan specifically looking for Karma to like make her as your main character, you're gonna be pretty disappointed. Like this is this is kind of high roll, but like I actually usually play her like when I do my Golden Quest roll because I feel like she fits in. She will fit in with like literally every single Golden Quest cash out. So when I see that, I'll just try to go for anti-heal and then meta items, and then I'll just like play her plus my Golden Quest cash out as my duo carry.
Okay. I can see that, especially since there's some really powerful frontliners that go, okay, I can see it.
Yeah, but like as like a main carry where you're trying to build your whole team around, it's like not really gonna work.
The other thing I want to talk about is a build that's starting to popularize a little bit thanks to K3 Soju doing well with it on ladder. It's Vanguard Blasters, specifically around Hui and variations of Hui Ezreal. Do you think this comp is for real?
So like it definitely is like somewhat viable. I believe there's like optimization going around right now where like you don't play the Ezreal at all. You don't play for Blaster, and instead you fit in preservers, as in like you play the Bard and the Zillion instead. So you like lose the 4 Blaster, but you get like more tankiness on your team, and like you get to fully invest in the magic damage. So stuff like Shiv is going to be a little bit more powerful, not playing like a duo AD and AP carry. Apparently that's been seeing a lot of success. I haven't personally played it myself yet, so can't really say.
It's better in the data. It's very popular in APAC. I believe it's Japanese and Korean and Taiwan players. Like they're playing more Preserver Hui with Vanguards for the reason you mentioned. It's just more efficient for streamlining your damage, and also because it caps pretty high if you can get to, you know, like a late game Preserver setup, because obviously you're playing Morgana and things like that, which is a lot better than just whatever other blaster you're playing, because Smolder Varus is always like it's like okay in that comp as a 4 blaster setup. So I like that. It's funny because in the data it's actually exactly like Ezreal is exactly delta neutral. I think he's like 0.01. Like, so basically playing without him, not really a difference. So it kind of shows you that you can duo carry a lot of different things besides Ezreal. It's just I think people want Ezreal to be good because he's a fun champion. He has like this set 10 ability and people just want him to be good.
I think they just need to make Ezreal smarter. Like I don't think they even need to touch his damage. He's just an idiot. No flame.
Yeah. Okay, I actually have a conspiracy theory. I think because I watched one of my fights, I was carrying Ezreal. I tried this on stream, obviously, because everyone else was talking about it, so much hype. Ezreal ulted my opponent's bench with 1 unit, and there was like a clump of frontline he just ignored. So my theory is that it's actually detecting more units than what's on the battlefield, because I feel like Ezreal like is targeting. And the reason why I think that this is possible is because that was actually true for Deja back in set 7 Dragonlands, where Deja threw like a big wave. It's not the same Deja as in this set, the hero augment, but she would cast a big giant AoE wave and it would target the bench. So the way you would counter Deja was put units on the back corner on the side that you want her to ult on. I feel like Ezreal, that's my consistency there. I think he's actually detecting that too.
Or maybe he's like ulting the other board, like the other boards that exist.
Yeah, you TP away from home, so he's like trying to see other boards and maybe ult that. I don't know.
I mean, regardless, he's just not very smart. So
agreed. All right, well that concludes our meta section. We'll probably do another episode after the B patch, and we'll probably tackle most of the other. There's a lot of other comps to talk about. There's a lot of fraudulent hero augments that Dishsoap wants to flame. There's other reroll comps that are still alive. Syndra is not dead, but check out our tiers if you want to see all that information. Let's move on to fact or fraud for our second major segment here, where I threw out observations about the meta and I asked Dishsoap, is it fact or is it fraudulent? The first one is Bulwark's Oath and Sunlight Cape are currently the top 2 Radiant items in the game. Is that fact or fraud?
I feel like it's kind of fraud because I just feel like you don't see Radiant items enough to get good like data sets on them right now. I think they're all like sub 1k games, like literally all of them. So I feel like they can just shift super fast. Like I wouldn't be surprised if like they already shifted from like when you wrote this.
Oh, I checked it this morning, so it'd be surprising if it was just a few hours later. But this is actually a trick question, just so it's actually half pop quiz. And the reason why it's fraud, no, you're entirely correct. It is fraudulent, but the reason why is because you have to filter out 10 portal, and Bulwark's Oath goes on to Galio really often. And so it ends up spiking. Like, because I looked at this, I was like, this just can't be right. Like Bulwark's, there's nothing about this item that makes it intuitively really strong. And that's because it always gives Bulwark's Oath to Galio, and there's a delta of like -2 on him for some stupid reason. I was like, what is it? Gotta be 10.
Yeah, I guess like if you want to look at like rated items, you have to filter out Sim Portal, I guess. I didn't
Yes,
think about that.
100% now. So just a fun little factor fraud slash half pop quiz, but Dishsoap got it right anyways. Okay, number 2, Scoreboard Scrapper, one of the strongest lose streak augments in previous sets, is averaging a 4.7, 46, 16 slash line. So high win rate, but it's terrible placements. Is that factor fraud?
I think it's kind of fact. I mean, they introduced this last set, right? I don't think it was a thing in set 10.
You are correct, actually. So I misspoke. Previous set.
Like we've only ever seen this augment in a set with a very prominent lose streak trait, Fortune. And I mean, last set, I believe the stats on this were like pretty similar when you didn't play Fortune. I don't think it's like bad though. I think just in general, playing towards a lose streak line is going to put you at a below average spot. And I think like 4.7 compared to like the average 4.5 just kind of makes sense. But I still think good players can get used out of like all the extra stats that you get and can still win. So I don't think it's like that fraudulent, but I don't think it's bad. I guess it's just it's hard to lose streak.
Yeah, I think the stats don't lie. I think it's one of those things where maybe you don't pick it as often as you think you should, but if you do have a good spot for it, 16% win rate is pretty solid. Like that's definitely pretty high for an augment. So I think that this is fact as well. Okay, number 3. This one is a Leduc special. Shout out to Leduc, the true QA test team of Riot Games. You should often position Varus in the 3rd row to snipe enemy backline clumps. This is because Varus, there's a video that Leduc talked about where if you move Varus to the 3rd row, maybe he shoots the enemy backline instead of the enemy tank. What do you think, Dishsoap? Factor fraud?
I'm kind of mixed on this because like the thing is like I looked at the meta TFT, like the stats where you look at the placements of the unit on your board. Like you can click any unit and it'll tell you what hex has the highest win rate, and he does actually have the highest win rate when you put him in the 3rd row. But I don't know.
Really?
Yeah. But from like my own game knowledge, I feel like there are definitely some times where you'd rather just be hitting the front line to like get through it. And like if he's not gonna one shot their backline, I feel like it's just like you just shouldn't try to hit the backline because then you're just gonna kind of wasting damage until a second cast, or like maybe you would do it if you have another way to access backline. I don't think it's like an always thing. I think it's just like a situational thing. And for me, it's like a situation that doesn't come up that much when I play Varus.
Yeah, I think I like that answer. I think the answer to a lot of positioning questions is like, when should you do it? Not should you always do it. And I think that if there's ever a situation where you always position a carry in the 3rd row, I think the game is less interesting for that. And I think TFT is much more dynamic. I think you're like underestimating the game if you're like you should always position him in 3rd row. But it is funny. I mean, I don't know if your chat has suggested it at point.
Oh, for sure. Like you put Varus in the corner and they'll be like, oh, shouldn't Varus be in the 3rd row? Like they saw that like one YouTube short and they think it's like that's like something you should always do no matter what. But the reality is it's like, not really.
This is a side topic, but TFT is releasing a PvE single player mode, and where you like play a bunch of puzzles and essentially just try to roll down and spend your gold and max your high score. There's a puzzle where I was playing Varus and I actually front rowed him specifically where it didn't make a lot of sense, and chat was losing their mind. I think they just want to do something really weird. I think for them that's like a really cool unintuitive play. So they always suggest the unintuitive play to try to help you like solve something if you're like losing. So they come from a good place. They just want to see something pretty woke.
Oh, I actually love like when you can just frontline your carry and it looks stupid, but it actually works. Like that's like one of my favorite moments, but doesn't happen that much.
Okay, number 4, Witchcraft Emblem is the best emblem in the game ahead of Arcana, Frost, Portal, and Pyro. Those are 4 emblems that people would always put ahead of Witchcraft, conversationally. But in the stats, it says Witchcraft Emblem is the best. Is that factor fraud?
I wonder how much of it's coming from Flexible. I feel like Witchcraft Emblem you could always use. Literally like no matter what. So if I'm playing Flexible, like sometimes even like Portal and Pyro will be dead, but like you could always use Witchcraft because you're like never gonna mind playing like a Nico, a Fiora, or like a Morgana on your board. I don't know if that's like all of it, but like I don't know. I feel like Flexible is taken so often that it might be. But even outside of Flexible, I don't know. I don't think Witchcraft is like terrible. Maybe the best version is like Witchcraft Rise now or Witchcraft Ren. Not sure.
Okay, well, nothing gets past you because this was, again, another trick factor fraud.
Was it Flexible?
It is if you remove the data of not just Flexible, but also Trait Tracker. But if you remove Flexible, it actually does still stay somewhat competitive. But once you remove Trait Tracker and Flexible, it just plummets like a lot to be like one of like the worst or like mid-tier emblems compared to the rest. If you look at the data of Witchcraft Emblem, you don't play anything more than 2 Witchcraft if you get out of Flexible and Trade Tracker, because every time you go 4 and 6, your average placement drops by like 0.3, 0.4. So you're entirely spot on, Dishsoap, once again. Nice job.
Oh.
All right, number 5. I promise this one's not a trick one. This one I keep throwing a couple of tricks up my sleeve. 4 and 5 Arcana is virtually same in the stats. No diff. Basically at 3.7, 65. So like they're obviously good, but 4 or 5 Arcana, no diff. That factor fraud.
I guess it's hard to say. Like I don't really have like, because they're all different breakpoints with the trait, like the emblem breakpoints, or sorry, not the breakpoints, but like you gain a different like amount of stuff for going from 4 to 5 with every different version. And I don't really have like all of those memorized, but also I think it's like kind of high-key hard to fit 5 Arcana or even like 4 Arcana on boards. Like even when I'm like have an Arcana emblem and Flexible, I think it's actually pretty hard to fit in like the Ari late game or something. 4 Arcana is still fine because like just dropping one of the useless ones is still good. That would be my guess.
Yeah, I think dropping one of the Arcana is probably like the equivalent of getting a Tactician's Crown. You just get to free up another spot to play a high quality unit. And if you're in a spot to do that, late game, if you're like taking out Ari or a Morgana or Camille, like, I mean, that's basically just as good, if not better. So yeah, that's probably why the stats on 4 Arcana are still really, really good. Just interesting food for thought. Again, I only add basic filters just to make sure to pass the BS detector. I'm sure some data scientists might dive in and investigate that a little bit further, but just fun food for thought. Okay, so let's move on to our main topic for today. And we got a lot of demand to talk about augments for set 12, which I always think is a good big topic to start early in the set. That was our first episode actually back in set 11. So let's just go dive into it. What is your approach to set 12 augments, Dishsoap?
I think big picture, the like main diff for me is I think the augments that gives you items are particularly better. And this like somewhat includes emblems because a lot of units like do kind of want the emblem like in their item slot. So I think those augments on average have gone up because there's no encounters anymore. You're seeing a much more standardized amount of items and you're seeing a lot less items on average per game. So just having item augments to have the ability to like get the duo trio carry set up that you're used to in previous sets like is a big deal, I think.
Yeah, I see people say that they miss encounters because they're like, where's my items? Like, I got screwed here. And like, you know, because everyone's contesting the same bow and rod on carousel, and encounters often actually were a way for you to navigate around that. So I definitely know what you're talking about.
I'm specifically clicking the goal augment that gives you just 3 components and the reforger like way more often than I used to.
Big grab bag.
Yeah, big grab bag. Just to fix my items. And I don't know. I think it's good. I think it's way better than it used to be.
It's the most popular augment currently in the data, so for good reasons. And that actually climbs as you play like a higher play rate at higher elo. So the good players are clicking more item augments, that's for sure. Have you noticed any kind of trends? So for example, I wrote down that silvers this set have more of a delayed payoff, right? Like you can blue streak or econ up more with restart mission, which is like a really fun thing that just nukes your board. It's good for blue streak. Precise planning, which is if you lose by 2 units or win by 2 units, get a little bit more econ. Patience is a virtue, which is like banking more rerolls, which is one of the new things. You get to bank those rerolls for future turns. Does that mean that silver, you want to like lose streak more often, or does that just happen circumstance?
I don't think that necessarily means you want to lose streak. It's just like I kind of think about it in the opposite. I feel like if I'm taking something that like is gonna make me strong, like secure my strength later, like I feel like completely fine trying to save HP earlier so that I can reach that power spike with a good HP buffer. I don't think that necessarily means you want to lose streak. They've been doing this for a while with silvers. I think it's like just a good design space because it's just kind of boring to make gold augments that are like 30% worse or whatever. So they're making them like, they're just making them delayed gold augments pretty much.
Shout out to Harmacist 1, which was just like the most boring augment of all time.
I think like most of these are pretty good and I take them and I think they're fun to play.
There's a ton of delayed ones, right? And this is on top of over encumbered, AFK, risky moves, the 8-turn items. Silvers have a lot more interesting design space. There's also fewer of them in general, so
I mean, I've been in the remove silvers camp for like the longest time, but if they're just gonna make silvers basically like gold augments, then I don't really mind.
Interesting. You want to remove silver augments?
Oh, I've wanted to remove them for a while. I just think I mean, 2 sets ago they were so boring, man. Like Harvest's 1, like basically all the combat augments in the game had a silver version that was just so boring to take, and then they like added some of these new delay ones. I think they got a lot more interesting.
There's a couple of like weird ones that people don't really know how to use. There's like final resistance or something like that, where if a unit dies, you shred. So they're still trying to experiment with ideas in silver. Do you like any of those?
No, not really.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, there's a few new ones that don't really do that well, but that's probably just like a balancing thing.
Prismatics, this set have more item and econ augments than ever before. So now we have things like invested, which gives you, banking rerolls, or upward ability, at what cost, which like levels you up to 6 and you can't pick your augments. An augment that I think you hate, actually. And then there's a bunch of artifact combos, right? Like Sniper's Toolbox or Assassin's Claw, things like that. So what are your thoughts on Prismatics? It feels almost like there's no combat Prismatics anymore. Like, what's going on?
So I think Prismatic is the set. Like the main change from previous sets is that at 2-1, I feel like there's so many more econ augments because they added at what cost. They added subscription servers, which I consider econ. They added like dual purpose, the one that like gives you gold per turn, and then like whenever you buy XP, you reroll. And then they added upward mobility, like you said. That's like 5 that are just completely new on 2-1 only. And they didn't really remove anything. They're still your level up. They're still your shopping spree. They're still your birthday present. They're still your going along. So the odds you see like a 2-1 econ augment is like just super, super high. And then also the other biggest change is like you mentioned, there's like these new like artifact combos. So there's more like item augments on your like 3-2 and 4-2 than there used to be. But yeah, definitely like a lot less combat. Yeah.
So with that in mind, a lot of times if you know a prismatic's coming up, potentially could try to use things to help fix your, or just consider like your item economy and other things like that in the late game. Would you think that's fair to say?
Yeah, but the thing is, like, some of these item augments are not very good. Especially the assassins one is just like terrible.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I don't know. I even think like the one that gives you like Manazane and Zanias is like a little more niche than normal because I actually don't think those items want to go on the same unit. So you have to be in a spot where you can use like both items on different units, which I think is pretty rare. And then like there's the trenchcoat one, which I think is even like, it's not really niche because the items are generic, but it's just like, I mean, it is kind of niche.
Yeah, and I think that's space where we're probably going to figure out and optimize a lot more. So one example of a prismatic item combination that's starting to get a lot more love is the Marksman's Toolbox with Sniper's Focus and Fishbones, because people are recognizing there's some pretty powerful combos that you can play, particularly if you get things like Fishbones on Kog'Maw, or even just putting it on like Callista. People have figured out like you can do that in late stage of the game. Also, Fishbone Smolder also is really funny. I'm not entirely sure how good it is, but they have Smolder too, so it can't be that bad.
Oh no, that's not even the Woksh combo. I mean, it's basically the same thing as Kog'Maw, but the Woksh combo is Namze 3 with 3 Dragon with a Fishbone Sniper.
Oh, I see.
Because then you just sneezes and explodes the whole backline. I've actually seen it, and it's actually pretty good.
Actually, there's even more Woksh combo. Have you seen Fishbone's Ari by any chance?
Oh yeah.
Where she throws the orb randomly on the board. It just goes kind of crazy.
I mean, I actually think it would be BIS if, like, for some reason there was like an AP Fishbone. It's like I think that would be BIS on Ari.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's like that good for her because you just don't get any stat value. You just get like the old cheese pretty much.
But it's pretty funny though.
Yeah,
it's at least
hilarious.
Okay, so we talked about some of the augments that you might pick. What about some of the fake augments, or maybe some of the fake stats? Have you seen any so far, or any like traps that people are falling into early in the set?
Yeah, but I'm like trying to think of something. I don't know. I personally think like especially, I mean, I think all the hero augments are overrated, but I think the Galio one is like super overrated. I mean, I don't know. I think it's like pretty bad at high elo. Maybe it's still very, very good.
It is. You're right. You're entirely right. It's a 4.6 at like GM plus right now or something like that.
Yeah, so I think that's like one of the bigger ones. Like I usually skip that augment, and like people in my chat are wondering why. It's hard for me to like think. Like think of specific examples of augments I think are like fake. Besides just like the hero augment ones I think are overrated.
There's the standard fake augments that always overperform. So Golden Egg always looks better in the stats. Yeah. Hero augments on 3-2 always look better in the stats. I also think that people have to be really mindful of what different type of augments look good because of the meta. There's some augments that really perform super well because reroll is so dynamic. So like Upgraded Adventure, is it actually truly a broken augment, or is it because one cost reroll is so good that it ends up rewarding you for something you want to do anyways in the S tier comp?
Oh yeah, I think that augment is like very good for the Ari line. It's like, do not play that with like any other one cost reroll, it's like pretty trash. Actually, one I think is like high key kind of fake is Frosty Frontline, the one that gives you a Eternal Winter dummy.
Oh, interesting.
I think that augment is straight up like it's just gambling because I only think it's good with 7 Frost, and 7 Frost is only good with Emblem. So like if you look at the stats on 2-1, it's a 4.21. That's like amazing. But I actually like don't think you're supposed to take it unless like you can guarantee a Frost Emblem somehow. Like I actually just think your board is just gonna be trash if you don't get the Frost Emblem.
Interesting.
Because like I look at the stats and then you look at Frosty Frontline and you exclude Frost Emblem, it was like a 4.6. So
ooh, that's good stuff. That's good stuff.
I know this because I may have taken this and didn't get Emblem and then went 7. Got upset.
All right.
But I mean, I think it's good if you have the Emblem and you get 7 Frost, but I think it's like pretty bad otherwise. So I definitely think that's qualifies for being kind of fake.
And then what about the reverse fake, where some augments look worse than they actually are? So when is it acceptable to take an augment that's like a 4.6, 4.7, but it's actually better than that for your spots?
I mean, I think Portable Forge is like all right. It's like a 4.7 in the set, just because like I feel like people are just probably taking bad items. I think this is usually the case. Like all of like the standard equal augments that have been good forever are like sub 4.5 just because like there's just better augments that exist, but I don't think they're bad. Like I don't think like Raining Gold is bad. Like last set we would never say 2-1 Raining Gold was bad, but it's like a 4.62.
Yeah,
so.
Raining Gold being bad is mind blowing to me. At least in the stats, it's not even really bad. It's just like average. I wrote down a few other different suggestions to think about to help some of our listeners or viewers. Sure. If you are ever like lacking items, there's some augments like Impenetrable Bulwark, which might actually really help, but it's like terrible in the stats.
I don't know if I want to recommend that because it gives you a declaw.
Okay, well, they nerfed declaw, but I'm talking. Okay, let me. How about a different augment then? Okay,
agree,
if you're playing like an AD comp, like and you're carrying like blasters and you want to use overwhelming force, and you just need a bunch of swords because you have no.
I don't want to. Sorry, I don't want to actually you again, but they removed that augment.
Oh wait,
for Assassin's Tools.
Oh God! All right, okay. Is there
they removed the DVIE one? And they removed the Rabadon's JG one for like the artifact augments.
Okay, fair enough. If you're playing Callista or something, or Rise, and you really desperately need a Rage Blade and a red buff, you can take Blinding Speed, even if it doesn't do well in the data. I think I finally landed on a good example.
Yeah. I mean, that one still exists, and I agree. I've taken that one in the spot you're saying.
Okay, great. Okay,
we made it.
If the portal context changes, so for example, 2 Unlucky Gloves is not great, but if you're on Anvil Buffet where you can kind of get a bunch of different gloves, I've seen people take it, especially if it's like a 4 or 5 component start. I've seen people start off with 2 to 3 Lucky Gloves immediately. Which is insane. So think about stuff like that. Late game specialist on like Crab Rave or Scuttle Puddle, and you're like kind of an econ start. Things like that make a lot more sense. And the last example I wrote is if you're in a really big contested 4-cost line, reinforcement looks bad in the data, but sometimes it's like one of the best things you can hit to help salvage a placement. Because let's say in this meta specifically, it's Rise. You get that 4-cost Rise stabilize you, and that changes your game completely. All right, let's talk about 2-1. When is it okay to use raw average placement of an augment, you think?
It's like, I don't know. I actually like just don't use this at all. But like, it's definitely fine to use it sometimes. It's definitely fine to use it if you don't really know what you're playing. When I think about an augment, I think about like what line it leads me to, and I kind of base my decision around that more. I would say just for general advice, if you don't really know what you're playing, probably fine to just look at the generic stats.
Okay. I see a lot of top players still do that and find success. Like Robin Songs, for example, still pulls up tactics.tools and just like sorts by 2-1. It's like, oh, this one's broken. It's like a 4.2.
The thing is, like, if you do that, it kind of like expedites the process of like picking your line, because if you just pick the best generic augment and then you like dig like a little deeper into like what that augment specifically performs well, it just says like, oh, you should take this augment and play this line. And I think like that is where you can get effect out of it. I guess like I just prefer to like do reverse. Like I like to know the lines I can play with augments like beforehand and then figure it out when I see them. I don't think it's bad to do it that way for sure. All
right, let's do like a fun little mini game. Let's do like a Kill Bang Marry for the top 10 augments of each category. Okay, so for here are the top 10 silvers. I'm just gonna say silver ticket, stationary support, exiles, keepers, risky moves, spoils of war, caretaker's ally, band of thieves, over encumbered, Pandora's bench. All really good silvers to eventually start off with. So
do you want me to like talk about all of them or just like 3?
Just three of them. Just three of them.
All right. I'll kill spoils.
Spoils of War? What? That's like my favorite one. That's the one I wanna marry. That one's my favorite one. Oh my god.
We're talking like I mean like I think I like the augment. It's just like I'm talking like power wise. Like actually, never mind. I'm just reading them again. No, I want to kill Pandora's bench. Never mind. Augment.
Oh, okay. What don't you like about Pandora's bench? Too powerful?
Oh, I know. I actually don't think it's very good. Like I don't know. It's fine. Like it's fine. I have thought this augment's been overrated like forever, and I think it's like leads to a lot of frustrating scenarios where like on both sides, like sometimes you just like high roll so hard you can just like grief everyone else's units, or sometimes you just low roll so hard you don't see the unit you're like trying to roll into the whole game. I think it's like sometimes not fun for either side, and I also just think it's overrated. So I'll kill that augment.
Actually, I like this line. How about we just do overrated, underrated? So you think Pandora's is overrated?
Oh yeah.
What about underrated for silvers?
I don't know if it's underrated, but like Exiles is performing like so well this set compared to last set, and I don't even know why. Because like last set on PBE, they like added Silver Exiles back because I don't think it was a thing in like set 10 or something. And then I looked at this augment and looked at the numbers it gave, and I was like, oh, this augment looks fucking broken. I'm just gonna take it every game. And I said this on PBE. And then it came out on live and it was like a 4.7 the whole set. And then I just thought to myself, like, oh, maybe I just don't know how to evaluate anything. But then like they do not change the augments numbers at all. It comes back this set, it's just a perma 4.2. I do not even understand.
That's so weird.
But yeah, I don't know. Maybe stats are fake. Maybe like I just can't explain.
I agree with that because every time I listen to a stream and someone looks up the data on Exiles, they say the same exact things like, oh, wait, what? Exiles is really good. And they always say that with a surprise. So I think it's definitely a really underrated augment for sure. Okay, let's talk about golds. Flexible, high horsepower, molten caramel, portal crest, all that shimmers. Spellblades, Frosty Frontline, Power Crest, learning spell fortune favorites. I think you already know which one is overrated, which is Frosty Frontline. What's an underrated augment you think out of these golds?
I mean, it's not underrated, but I actually think flexible is like better than like people think it is, and they think it's the best augment in the game. But I actually think it's just like it clears everything up. Like I think it's better. Like people think it's the best augment in the game, but I think it's better than what people think. Like I actually think it's that good. I think it's like a true like 2.x average.
Wow. Okay. Well, way to make me feel bad because I think I took flexible and got 5th the other day.
Oh, I mean that's still possible with the 2.x average. Don't feel bad.
I mean, 5th is probably like the lowest you could place with it. A lot of times it feels like because you just get so much extra stuff. But sometimes you get complete garbage as well.
I don't know. I think like the only weakness of the augment is that you just get dizzy sometimes. But I feel like if you could play through the dizziness every single game, it would just like clear everything. And I think it does most of the time.
All right. Top prismatics. Prismatic ticket, upgraded adventure, frost crown, pyro crown, shimmer scale essence, subscription service, sugarcraft crown, buried treasures 3, portal crown at what cost? Which one's overrated? Which one's underrated?
I think at what cost is overrated. I think it's getting boosted at the stats because these guys don't know how to play the early game. They get a little free early game. They get free level 6, free fast 9. But I feel like, I mean, at least for me, I feel like I can gain advantage out of like actually picking the right augments later and not just like it being a coin toss. And I am just really not interested in taking this augment anymore. I don't know. I took it in like scrims one time in 4v4 and I was like gonna win the game. And then my augment was like, my gold augment on 4-2 was like heroic grab bag when I was playing like a fast 9 comp and I had all my like 2 and 3 costs upgraded. So it was literally just like 12 gold or something. That was my 4-2, and then I just lost out. So and I never really like I don't know, like in tournament I would never want to take that.
Which one's underrated out of all these?
Okay, low-key sugarcraft. I don't think people realize how big of a deal the actual like the extra completed item from the prismatic is. Getting like the extra redemption just due to how like the scaling with the items work. I don't know the exact math on it, but I'm pretty sure it like gets you to your breakpoints way earlier than normal. So I wouldn't really put it in the same space as like, because I think gold, silver, I think gold sugarcraft actually performs like pretty poorly. And I think like if you actually try to craft the emblem with 2 components, it performs pretty poorly. I think if you get it from the prismatic, you get like the 2 components from the emblem, you get the 2 components from the completed item. You're just up 4 components with sugarcraft. I think it's like, definitely underrated.
Yeah. I haven't really been giving my opinion, but you know, because a lot of the stuff that we either covered or I agree with it. I also think buried treasures 3. People are like, I think it's probably because it's not an exciting augment by itself, but I think it's actually quite good given what we talked about before, which is the item economy right now is a really big part of the game at the moment. So I really like that augment, and I think a lot of mid-tier players really like don't pick that as often as they should.
Yeah, I think the augment's really good as well.
All right, let's talk a little bit about mid-game augments. There's a lot to kind of parse, but the one thing I want to ask is a common question that we get in our Discord server or in our questions in our podcast, which is with charms this set, it feels like economy is a really big deal, and you want to try to go for those charms. But what happens if you're like on a mid streak? You have no win streak, you have no lose streak, you don't get a lot of gold from Krugs, and it feels like you can't really roll down, or you're just completely throwing away your game plan. But yet you also same time you feel like you're losing to all the people who are rolling, especially the reroll players who are buying charms. Like, what are we doing in that situation? Is there anything we can do in our augments at 3-2 to help us here?
Usually that's like actually just an error of like I talked about this before, but usually an error like an area like that where you're like mid streaking and you don't have enough money to like go level 8, but you're also not in a spot to reroll. I feel like usually it's actually just like an error with like line selection, which is like kind of hard to hear, and it's also like hard to fix because it's like that's like one of the hardest things you can do in the game, like picking the correct line with like limited information, because most games like you can probably put yourself in a decent spot for something. It's just sometimes hard to see. But
skill issue is what Dishsoap is saying.
I will say though, like a lot of the best augments in the game, like the set, are just the emblem augments. So if you feel like you're in a spot to like play like say like your Frost, your Pyro, your Portal, or whatever, make sure you actually have that tailored on 3-2, as in like make sure you have the trait active. Because if you don't have the trait active, you won't be able to see those augments and you won't actually be able to hit that out. So I think like sometimes playing a weaker board on 3-1 to be able to see like those very, very powerful +1s is like something you should definitely consider. I guess that'd be my advice.
There's a lot of like 3-2 augments specifically that also spike in power, and I think some players just don't understand why. So why something like Sleight of Hand and Capricious Forge, like why do they feel like they look better in the data at 3-2 and they spike so hard, specifically at that point in the game?
It's just that like when you take those augments when you have a strong unit unitemized, and just giving like an upgraded or like just like a strong like 1-star 4-class unit like a TG with like extra stats from Sleight or like a Capricious Forge is just going to be like a really, really strong mid-game power spike. That might be the thing that like turns your mixed streak spot into like a win streak stage 3 spot, and you can push that into an advantage later. So yeah, just giving a bunch of items at relatively low cost to like a good unit is a pretty good thing to do on 3-2.
Yeah, and another thing to consider as well, right now the phase between 3-2 and 4-2 is actually quite crucial for where your HP is and how the game develops. And so a lot of times spiking and preserving HP, like you'd be very surprised how often your placement just naturally improves if you have a pretty good stage 2 and you have a really good stage 3 into the beginning of stage 4 and you're into your third augment. And I think those Thieves gloves like Roll the Dice, Band of Thieves, Sleight of Hand, Capricious Forge, they all help a lot of your mid game. So that way you're in a position where you can kind of play for trading your HP. How many times have you guys been in like a late stage 4, stage 5 situation where you have no HP, but your board's good, but you're like, I feel like I have to roll a 0 for charms, and you're kind of in this like, am I holding or selling these units to buy a better charm or like to get powerful, but then you're selling units that you would have 2-starred if you like held on. You kind of get into the situation because you don't have the HP to play with. You have fewer options to make more desperation plays. And I think those kinds of like generic augments on 3-2 can actually be really big placement savers that people aren't considering. All right, then last question here. A lot of streamers I hear and players, including yourself, I always hear them say things like intuitively this augment at 4-2 or whatever should be a good pick. What are they talking about? Like when like a lot of players might not understand what you're saying or communicating. So when you're saying like intuitively, I feel like this should be really good, like a combat augment or whatever. What are you thinking about? What's going through your head?
Oh, like when I say that, it would probably be for an example of like an augment where like it feels like Riot wants me to take it. I feel like sometimes like augments just like look good for your spot, but they're just not. One of the examples would be like a trait augment that's not good in the trait. I'm trying to like go find one real quick.
So sometimes things sound pretty good because there's just some easy synergies. Let's say you're playing shapeshifters and shapeshifters are good. You see something like Inspiring Epitaph, which isn't particularly good, but it does scale off of your max HP. I think that's a little bit of what people are talking about. Like intuitively, this makes sense because here's 1, 2, 3, 4 reasons why it's better than usual. And a player that actually does this a lot is Asa. We actually had him on a podcast earlier where he actually factors a lot of like, well, right now, this is what my comp is trying to do. This is my win condition. And this augment actually directly feeds into that. So intuitively, I'm actually building into a stronger win condition by amplifying the effect of what my board is trying to do.
Specifically, like sometimes just like effects are undertuned even in the ideal scenario. And an example of that is like some of the augments based around buffing 3 costs, like the Silver Triforce augment that gives you like 3 costs like attack speed and stuff. It's just not like, even if you're playing like 3-cost carry, 3-cost tank, it is not a better augment than just like the generic silver combat ones. And that's like hard to know. Like you would assume that like the augment that only busts your 3-cost is just going to be stronger than a generic one if you're playing 3-cost carries, but that's just like a tuning issue. And the same thing also kind of exists with 3's a crowd. Like I think you have to be playing some absurd number like 5 or even maybe 6 to get like actual good value out of it. That's just not.
Wow, really?
Yeah, compared to just taking generic augments and playing a good board. So that's like one example. There's been definitely like a lot of examples of this throughout the sets. I also think like specifically like Mage Crest is not even that good for mages, because I don't think the breakpoints are that big, and I don't think there's that many good users of the set, which is like not very common, because usually Mage emblem has been like one of the most broken emblems.
I think they're very deliberate about that this set.
Yeah.
They try to make sure like no mage abuse to make it feel like really stupid if you got the mage emblem.
It kind of feels like sterile and not fun though.
Agreed. Mage is a pretty uninspiring trait.
Like when I say this, it's usually just like talking about like an undertuned augment that you would probably pick in the ideal scenario, but it's just not better than something generic.
Ah, okay. I see. All right. Well, that was a really good discussion about augments. Hope you guys picked up a tip or two. Let's move on to pop quiz and then have a couple questions to wrap up this episode. So, pop quiz. I asked Dishsoap a couple questions. This one's actually an easy one because we talked about augments so much. It's the theme of today's episode.
I might still mess it up. I haven't looked at the stats that much.
Okay, well, here we go. So what is currently the best and worst AVP silvers in the game? What's the best one and what's the worst one?
Oh, God. Is it like keepers or the other one? I'll just say keepers because I don't remember. Is the best, and then the worst is like, I don't know what the worst is.
He's like thinking about all the bad silvers.
It's probably something like, I actually remember that it's like a decent bit worse than the others, but I forgot what it was.
So just for reference, I sorted by Diamond Plus because I feel like we need that for sample size.
I don't think it's the one that like shreds when you're gonna dies. I don't think it's Silver Veil. It's definitely not Young One and Free.
You want a hint?
Yeah, sure.
It's one of the new ones.
Yeah, it could be beggars, could not be choosers, but I actually don't think that's the worst one. Or beggars can't be choosers. I feel like I should know what this is. I just don't remember. I know which ones it's not, so like I know I'm not guessing. Okay, I'm just gonna like, so we can speed through the second. I know this is wrong, but I'll just say beggars can't be choosers.
That's actually correct. You got it. Beggars can't be choosers is a 4.9.
Oh.
It's I don't know why. I don't even think it's that bad. It gives you 7 gold and you get +3 augment rerolls for other augment choices. But the best one is misconnections because right now it's so good with the reroll lines.
Oh, overall. Oh, okay.
Yeah, overall.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oops.
No worries. So we'll call that a half point. Okay, right, question 2. As we talked about, raw raid and item data is fake because of 10 portal. So if you filter out 10 portal, can you name me 3 of the 5 best rated items when you filter that out?
Oh, it's the RA ones. It's I know it's adaptive, death cap, 3 out of 5. Adaptive, death cap, spark. Final answer.
5R, death cap, jock show, which is adaptive, crown guard, thieves gloves, and runins.
No,
so you
no
actually
spark?
get 2 of the 3. Yeah, spark is actually 6th or 7th. So
okay.
Just a little bit outside the range. What, crown guard is really that good though?
Yeah, I don't know why that's so high up. Are you sure that's not this is like the filtering of the portal stuff as well?
Yeah, because if you filter, okay, so we can use it. If you exclude 10 portal right now.
All right, honestly, close enough. 2 out of 3, and then the one that was right off. Oh, good. We take those.
Yeah. I wonder if any of that changes. Like maybe Ruinous Tempest is influenced when people take category 5 or something like that, or.
I mean, maybe Radiant Crown Guard just like broken on Mord. I could see that. Actually.
It could be. Okay, question 3. What unit currently has the lowest play rate in the game? And it's not even close. It's Soraka?
Oh, wait. Oh, not even close. Shit. Because you play that in Sugar. Oh, man. Okay, I'm not looking in stats. I'm just gonna look at the units.
Okay.
And then, like the team planner. Okay, it's probably just Seraphine then, right? Seraphine. No, but it's Seraphine or Ziggs. But like Loki, don't the noobs play like 5 honey? But the thing is, like, somebody plays Seraphine with upgraded adventure. Oh man, I'm actually getting tricked. No, but you play Cassio with like, you sometimes play Cassio. Okay, Seraphine final guess.
Ooh, close. It's Ziggs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ziggs is the only unit that doesn't crack even 1% play rate. Everything else is at least 2 or above. Ziggs is below 1.
So is it, the noobs aren't even playing 5 honey.
The noobs are not even playing Ziggs and 5 honey.
Okay. Sorry guys.
Okay, flexible, fortune, golden quest. Rank them 1, 2, 3 based off their win rate. What's the highest win rate? What's the second highest win rate? What's the third highest win rate?
Flexible's number one. Oh wait, Golden Quest. I don't look at the 3-2 sets at all. Ah, crap. Oh, I'm just gonna say that Flexible's number one. Fortune 2, Golden Quest 3.
Ooh, it is flexible, golden quest, and then fortune favors the bold. To be fair, it kind of depends on what you filter by, because as you filter rank, they actually continue to change. One thing's for sure is flexible still stays really far ahead, so you at least have that. Flexible is definitely the best augment. Honestly, close enough. I mean, I'm giving you harder questions because it's just too easy to be like, well, just name me the highest win rate augment, or like.
True.
So I got to make it a little bit tricky. Last question. Besides Magnum Opus, which is the 3-star 5-cost charm, what is the highest round win rate charm on stage 6+?
The thing is, I actually don't think it's Dragon after the nerf. Probably one of the Zerath ones, because Zerath's actually like in meta and late game, like for like the good late game comps like Ari. So it's probably just like one of the Zerath charms. It's probably not the tower. It might be the tower. I'm gonna guess like I think it's called like the star, the one that like upgrades your whole team. I might be misnaming it, but I mean the one that like upgrades like all your 1-stars. I'm gonna guess that one.
You're entirely correct.
All
the
right.
star is by far the highest win rate. Dragon is cleared by 10%. Dragon's at 68% win rate. The star's at 78% win rate.
Not bad.
Upgrade your whole board and get a bunch of AP.
Like the thing is, like you see that charm, and it might be correct to just like pivot like 4 random units on your board. If you just have like random 1-star 5+ on your bench looking to upgrade.
Yeah.
Like you just play like two random Diana 2s, 2 random Briar 2s. Like it's all good.
It trips me out too, because sometimes when I'm spectating or even playing games, I like pivot over to a board. I'm like, where did this guy just hit all these 5-cost 2-stars at level 8? And it's because they had this star. So
also like the Moonstone one tricks you. I like it like in
Moon Ritual,
yeah, that charm. I like made the call. Like I don't think this was during an official game, but it was during one of the scrims. I made the like someone took Moonstone. They like upgraded their like Cassidon or something. I fought them, and then I make the call like, oh, this guy hit Cassidon 3, and then like 2 people on our team just sell their Cassidon. They're trying to grief from the other guy, and then like, oh, he didn't actually hit Cassidon 3. He just Moonstone upgraded for a turn. And we just sold all of our extras for no reason.
Yeah. In 4v4, you want to hold your opponent's units that they're rerolling. So this got tricked and told our team to sell the Cassidons when it was Moonlight Ritual. All right.
Yeah.
All right, not bad dish soap. I think we got a pretty good score on that one. Let's wrap it with a couple Q&A. The first one is from I'm Way Too Punny, one of our patrons. Thank you for supporting. I'll be playing my first Tactician's Cup this weekend. How do you prepare for a cup and tournament? I'm guessing this is one for you, dish soap, especially in the situation where there's a brand new patch right before and there's a potential huge meta change.
I would spend like a decent amount of time looking at like stats whenever you're like free, like just whenever you're free, like every single day, because it does like change a bit, and you'll catch like a lot of things you might miss if you're not like vigilant about it. Because like right now I'm actually not looking at the stats like that much compared to when I usually do, and like some stuff like kind of trips me out, and like I'll be like, oh, this augment actually averages a 5. I wouldn't expect that. But that like being on top of that stuff is like kind of important in my opinion. But past that, I think the way I like to do it is I try to like find out stuff that I'm personally uncomfortable with / like I am unsure of in the particular meta, and try to find answers to those questions. Like trying to figure out when a line is playable from like how little do you need to make a line playable, for instance, is like a very common question I ask myself. For example, for last set's regional prep, I asked myself the question of like, oh, is a loon playable without 6 umbral, like or / umbral spat? And then I came to the conclusion no. But then I also like through that testing, I came to the conclusion that like, oh, it's not playable without the spat, and it also is just bad in the meta because of X, Y, and Z, because I just watched all these fights. And you might not have time to do all that stuff a patch that lasts like less than a week before the tournament. But I would just say like try to find like play a few games, try to write down stuff that you're like uncomfortable with / like your questions. Just try to find like questions and stuff in the patch that you don't understand and try to answer them to your best ability.
I like that one. My tip is make sure you get good sleep. I think rest is a really big part of it, and people undervalue it because if they don't have time, they feel like they have to like work and really study everything and practice as many games as possible. But you definitely want to make sure you're in good mental condition for the tournament.
My 888 at Worlds was a 3.5 hour sleep special.
Yeah. Apparently Digital didn't sleep very well after the first day of Worlds, and then went 888 on stream on day 2 and had to clutch it out.
Yeah, it was not good. Same with like Socks. Apparently he got no sleep that night as well.
You made it dramatic is what you were doing. Okay, and then the other one from Miandola, which is, how do you guys approach studying your own games? I'm absolutely making mistakes, but identifying that is pretty difficult. I'll take the first crack at this. When you're studying your own games, the first thing I want to say is try not to actually spot every mistake, because the reality is even Dish Soap, I definitely make a lot of mistakes, but even Dish Soap is making lots of mistakes every game. And just try to focus on small improvements and work at one aspect of your game at a time will help you focus and identify a lot quicker. The second thing is, if you really are truly lost, don't be afraid to ask for help. There's people in our Discord, for example, TFTAcademy's Discord server, which you can find on our website. There's a lot of people that are willing to help. So if you need a second pair of eyes, just screenshot like a spot in your game and say like, hey, I really wasn't sure if I made the right augment choice or saying the right items. Asking someone else to help you figure out those mistakes and the things that you want to work on, it could be really helpful. And you'd be surprised how much information people are willing to help you out with.
For this, for me, just at like the baseline level is you should probably just look at like the biggest decision points throughout each game, which is one, what comp you choose to play, two, what items you slam, and three, what like augments you take. Like if you're just like starting out to like studying your games, I would just focus on like these three and probably these three only for a bit. And like if you actually like need help answering those questions, like Frodan said, like reach out. It doesn't even have to be on our Discord. There's so many like smaller TFT communities and Reddit groups that would be more than willing to like help you with your own games. But past that, like when you ask like how I approach studying my own game, I guess I just try to find like inconsistencies from my expectations of a spot and like what actually happens. So I'll like make a particular notes if I do very well in a game I thought I would do poorly in, or I'll do very poorly in a game that I thought I was in a good spot in. I think those are the games where I try to like focus on the most, / I'll like VOD review them or something. And I usually learn the most from those games because like it's usually that like my expectations are wrong and I need to like update my thinking kind of thing.
Interesting. I like that. All right. Well, thank you so much for everyone who submitted questions. Thank you to our patrons for supporting. Make sure to check out our Patreon if you want to get access to talking to me and Dish Soap about the game. We actually gave away some coaching sessions to our Prismatic supporters, but we also do things like a meta read for our gold tier Patreons, for like a newsletter. We basically do like a meta read where we update you guys what's happening, and that's going to be really relevant for the B patch. But that does it for this episode. It was a nice one, and we'll be doing another one probably maybe after Tacticians Cup weekend, because then the B patch kind of plays out. So,
yep.
What do you say, Dish Soap?
Sounds good.
All right, well, that wraps up this episode of TFT Study Hall. Make sure to like and subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you guys next time.
See you guys.